Good day, poker peeps. This is Sky with Smart Poker Study, and today I'm going to help you get into the most profitable poker situation more frequently. So, what is that situation? It's the bread and butter spot. Now, bread and butter means that you are heads up in position on the flop as the pre-flop raiser, and I'll show you what that filter looks like in just a bit. But an important message for you: action is the greatest teacher. If you're watching this on your Poker Tracker computer, go ahead and open up Poker Tracker 4 and follow along, run these same filters, record the same results that you're about to see me record as well, because this stuff is going to be important to open your mind up to the profit potential of bread and butter situations. So, first off, of course, my database, the past 8,400 hands since July 1st, basically a break-even player, slightly up in win rate, down in slightly in currency, and that's because I play a few different stakes, 10NL and 25NL. But let's go ahead and run the bread and butter heads up filter. This itself is the most profitable situation to be in. So before we get to this real quick, let me show you what the filter looks like. You made any pre-flop raise. On the flop, you have the opportunity to c-bet or the opportunity to raise a donk bet. Now, both of these together means that you were the pre-flop raiser. You didn't make any kind of call after raising. You didn't call a 3-bet because you have to be the final raiser pre-flop in order to c-bet or to face a donk bet. Now, player seeing the flop between 2 and 2, and you are in position. So once we apply this filter, you can see over the past 8,400 hands, I had a bread and butter situation 188 times. 188 times for a positive 300 big blinds per 100 hands win rate. So how often was I in a bread and butter spot over the 8,400 hands? I think it was 8,450, somewhere around there. 2.2% of the time, right? Of course, you want to strive for as much bread and butter as possible. Towards the end of this video, I'll give you an action step with the goal of trying to increase that percentage. So more often you're getting to the flop in a bread and butter spot as opposed to, not bread and butter, I guess. So let's take a look at this. Bread and butter heads up, 188 hands, positive 300. Things are looking pretty good. Now, I can tell you from experience, looking at hundreds of players' databases, that bread and butter spot is the most profitable that you can be in. Now, this filter, as you saw, is any raise, 2-bet, 3-bet, 5-bet, whatever it might be. Let's look at specifically 3-bet bread and butter pots. So instead of this one, let's get rid of that. Add filter, actions, pre-flop raises. We made a 3-bet pre-flop. All the other factors still apply. Heads up, we're in position, opportunity to c-bet or to face a donk bet. Only 35 hands, but look at that, positive 669. How lovely. 35 hands. Now, let's look at the opposite of bread and butter. When you just see the flop out of position, first off. Clear that filter. Let me show you how to run this one. Hand details, player position on the flop, out of position. So 308 times out of position. And positive 122. That's pretty good, right? Saw the flop out of position, still 122 positive. Loving that. What about saw flop out of position, but I was the pre-flop caller of a 2-bet right here? Most of these hands are probably going to be me in the blinds calling somebody's raise. Pre-flop calls, called the 2-bet. Now let's think about this. You're out of position, calling the 2-bet. This means most likely you were the one giving bread and butter to your opponent. Somebody raised in the cutoff, you called in the big blind. Somebody raised on the button, you called in the small blind. You're handing them bread and butter. You're putting them in the most profitable situation possible. It doesn't sound like winning poker, right? So as you can see, 98 hands, they all occurred out of the blinds, and it's negative 49. Eek. It's not too bad. Not as good as I'd like, of course, but let's see, and only 98 hands right here. So about 1/3 the time, so 0.7%, give or take. Now, the last filter, saw the flop out of position, called the pre-flop 2-bet, and I am multi-way. Multi-way means when you go to hand details, the number of players seeing the flop, multi-way would be between 3 and 10 players. 3 and 10, called the 2-bet, out of position. Oh, nice. It's only 18 hands. So you can see I really restrict the times I'm calling from out of position, and it's going to be multi-way. And so I'm probably only calling these with hands decent enough to battle multi-way opponents, right? As you can see, my 9-8, whoa, turning that straight or turning the flush, things were looking pretty good there. But positive 102. Now, what you might find as you run these, you're probably going to see positive win rates here, but you really might see negative in all three of these. And that's pretty indicative of, pretty indicative of most players. When you're out of position, calling a 2-bet and multi-way, all of these situations are not bread and butter. They're not the most profitable situations to be in. So what I want you to do after you run these numbers, after you figure out what your profitability is, your goal, of course, is to get as much bread and butter, or get into as many profitable situations as possible. So how do we do that? Well, here are the strategies. Getting more bread and butter. You're going to open raise, ISO raise, which means somebody limped in and you come back over the top with a raise, and you're going to 3-bet more frequently from the cutoff and the button. Those are the two positions where you're the button for sure. You always have post-flop position. But from the cutoff as well, as long as that button folds against you, you're going to have position post-flop. These are the most likely spots where you're going to be in a bread and butter. Always look ahead for 3-betters and callers before you come in for the raise. When you raise and you're looking for a bread and butter spot, you don't really want to face a 3-bet most of the time, unless you have pocket aces or kings, right? You'd prefer everybody just call you. Not everybody. 1 or 2 players just call you, as opposed to facing any 3-bet. So look ahead for that possibility. And then also have a bread and butter seeking mentality. So when you're in a late position, cutoff or button, before calling, consider 3-betting, right? And you want to think to yourself, well, calling here on the button, it doesn't give me bread and butter. And if I call, the small blind and the big blind might call. We're going to be multi-way. So ask yourself that question. Will 3-betting give me bread and butter? And if so, if that's the case, you may want to consider 3-betting as opposed to just calling. Remember what calling is. Calling is hopeful poker. You're hoping to hit something on the flop, hoping to hit a flush, hit a straight, hit a set, hitting 2-pair, whatever it might be. Aggression is winning poker. It's because when you're the 2-better, when you're the 3-better, you have a little bit of fold equity on your side. Sure, they might call and you go to the flop in a bread and butter spot, and now you play post-flop against your opponent. But they could also just fold and award you the pot then and there, which is a great result. Even if you have pocket aces and all you do is earn the blinds, hey, at least you gave yourself the best opportunity to get into a bread and butter situation with the best hand. And sometimes it doesn't work out. They just fold. You win 1.5 big blinds. But other times it does work out. You open raise with pocket aces. They call out of the button or out of the big blind. The pot's already 7 big blinds. Now you have more to fight for. You can make bigger C-bets for value against this player. So take action. This is what I want you to do. Hopefully you did this part as you watched the video. Run the filters above to find your win rates and the number of hands. Do a little calculation. How often were you actually in a bread and butter spot? And then your goal is to get more bread and butter than you have been. For me, I'm at 2.2%. I should target 3%. So I'm just having that bread and butter mentality, looking to be the pre-flop raiser against one caller as much as possible. Alrighty, thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, if you learned a little something, give it a thumbs up down below and subscribe to the channel. And I'll catch you on the felt.